call this meeting to order. May we have the roll call, please?
Commissioner Bennett?
Here.
Commissioner Chapman?
Here.
Commissioner Hallen?
Here.
Commissioner Ryan? Commissioner Smith?
Here.
Vice Chair Summers?
Here.
Chair Blair?
Here. At this time, will we all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, please? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. At this time, Commissioners, does anyone have any current events that they would like to discuss at this time? I have only one. I took my grandchildren to the wildlife zoo, and we're hoping that the Surprise area can start really showing our people how that is. It's a wonderful place. And there was a young gentleman there, William Hughes, that works for the Wildlife Zoo, and he actually just went out of his way to make sure that everybody there was very treated very respectful and everything. And he actually lives in Surprise Farms, so he is from Surprise and everything. Okay. So we just wanted to I wanted to shout out to them because of the fact that it was a great adventure, and everyone that hasn't been to the Wildlife Zoo outside of our Surprise, you definitely need to take a trip out there. It was great, and thanks to William Hughes for showing us all such a great time. Anyone else have anything they want to share? May we have staff reports at this time?
Madam Chair, members of the Commission, ladies and gentlemen, good evening. I have a couple items to report on this evening. The planning staff continues to work very diligently on the efforts to create the village plans for Village 1 and Village 3. As you all recall, Village 1 is the area in and around here, the Surprise Center, and we're getting close to putting that in final form to bring to the Planning and Zoning Commission for a final recommendation to City Council. At the same time, we're getting well into the Village 3 efforts as well, and that's the village in and around the White Tank Mountains, and that plan is shaping up very well. And Vanitha Kartha will be presenting information on that village planning effort to the Commission as well at some point over the next couple of months. Just also a reminder that the 2030 plan was not approved by the voters a couple of months ago. We are going to formally ask the Mayor and City Council on Thursday whether or not they'd like to go back to the voters for the 2030 plan in November. So if the Mayor and Council provide that direction, then we'll be coming back to the Planning and Zoning Commission to create a more specific education plan regarding that effort, because we do think it's very important. Lastly, I just want to remind everybody that it is Census Month, and people were receiving their census forms in the mail March 16th, 17th, or 18th, and we strongly recommend them to fill out the census form as soon as possible and send that in. If not, the friendly census workers will begin knocking on their door after April 1st. So it's a very important initiative. And for every City of Surprise resident that does not send in a form, we stand to lose $1,300 of annualized income every single year. So it's a very important process for the city, for the school district, for our transportation network, and so on. And that's all I have to report, ma'am.
Very good. Also, at this time, I'm going to have the call to the public. I just want to remind anyone that wishes to speak tonight on any of the items must fill out the paper that is located in the back. Okay? At this time, we're going to move on to the item number 1, and that is actually to approve the minutes. And these minutes were from January 19th, Planning and Zoning meeting. May I have a motion?
Move to approve.
I second it.
Okay. At this time, vote.
Madam Chair, the motion has passed with a vote of 4 ayes and 2 abstain and 1 absent.
Thank you. At this time, then, we're going to move on to our second agenda meeting, and we're going to ask for a presentation.
Tonight I'm bringing before you PAD amendment for the formerly known as Fox Trails. It is now called Desert Trails, PADA 09036. To give you an idea where this is located, it's the western portion of the city, above Sun Valley Parkway, about a mile, along 219th Avenue, just adjacent to the Volvo Proving Grounds, and about a mile and a half west of the Northwest Regional Landfill. On this diagram, I just want to show you some of the constraints we had to consider when working with this property. We do have the Volvo Proving Grounds, and the applicant has worked with Volvo to, and will continue to work with them to provide measures to give a buffer for them, whether it be one-story housings on the eastern edge and mounding. I'll say there's existing rural residential on the western side. Down below is high voltage lines below the property. And 219th Avenue exists up to Pinnacle Peak, to the northern edge of the property. And this is just a rural road, no curbing, just a rural road. And from time to time, it does get washed out in this little area, the wash area. And as we saw in the previous map, this is also just about half a mile below the Luke auxiliary fields. And while it's not in the Luke noise contours, it is within the area known the gradient density concept. So you'll see these yellow lines here, the half mile, they want only 2 units per acre, and 4 dwelling units per acre at the 1 mile mark. And the applicant has worked with Luke and will continue to work with them, especially when platting comes in, to make sure these densities are preserved. Also, one of the biggest constraints are the washes that go through the area, the Trilby and the Iona. And the applicant has actually worked with these and made these quite an asset for the project. In this green line here, the staff was able to get the Arizona Game and Fish with the applicant to talk to them about the mule deer linkage here. The white tanks, they actually collared some deer, and they followed it and found that this was a linkage to the mountains to the north. And so the applicant is working with them to provide a safe linkage so that we can preserve that area through there. That line also represents, if you remember about a year and a half ago, I presented to you the Parks and Trails plan. This is a portion of that large signature that will be going through there, and the applicant will be building this portion of the trail for all users of the city. What I wanted to do also here is to give you a little bit of a history. This is the third reincarnation of this project. So the first one was Fox Trails. It was approved in 2001, and as you can see, it was based around a golf course in the wash areas. It was 877 acres, 2,400 units, providing a density of about 2.7 dwelling units per acre, and it had 35% open space. Excuse me. In 2007, DeSeo was brought forward by Centex Homes, and this actually added 20 acres to make this 897 acres, reduced the density to 2320, which has a density of 2.6 dwelling units per acre and 35% open space. And this was more of a new urbanist approach of design for this area, and you will see that there's a lot of higher densities clustered in areas around here, and some multifamily down and through here. Now, this is what we are proposing today, and this is more of a traditional project. And this is still 897 acres, dropped down to 2,140 units, because you see a lot of that medium density and high density residential has gone away or reduced in numbers. It's reduced down to 2.5 dwelling units per acres, and the open space has actually increased to 40%. Now, there's 3 basic changes that are happening in this PAD amendment. One is the densities, and this is just showing you this is all the low density residential areas, which is the bulk of the project. Some medium density residentials, and I'd like to point out that they are spread throughout there to give it a mixed neighborhood. And then these 2 areas of mixed use. The one on the eastern side is for a community center for the use of the residents of Desert Trails. And the one on the west at the corner of Pinnacle Peak and Deer Valley, that is flexible for, it can be higher density residentials, it can be commercial, and other uses like that, which are listed in the document. And also we have a community park, which will be a public park, which I will get into next here. Another change is the transportation element on here. On-site, this graphic shows you the on-site circulation, and one important thing that for fire and safety is that they required quarter-mile accesses all around. And anybody knows that you see a lot of these developments that have these large walls, and you go in and get lost in a maze of roads. This provides a little bit easier for emergency vehicles to get in, and also for residents to get out through there. And one change that's happening with this, and you'll see forward in future PUDs, is that the transportation plan is going to change with the City of Surprise transportation plan. A lot of times you'll see sections of roads in here. This Deer Valley Road back in the original one showed an arterial. Our transportation plan has changed, and now it's a parkway, a 200-foot right-of-way parkway. So what this will do, you won't see sections in there because it's going to go by what we have in our transportation plan. So as our transportation plan, if 211 changes from a major arterial to a minor arterial, it'll reflect it in this document, keeping up with that. Off-site, and you'll see Sun Valley Parkway to the south here. 219th Avenue will be improved up to the area. And then another safety issue is, and you've heard this in other projects, is we need 2 points of access. If something was to happen, we need, and the road was washed out, we need another way in there. And that's very important, especially to a almost 2,200 units up here. And this project is also going to be building a road to the east, connecting up with the existing road by the landfill. And this public road, which will also be helping the existing residents in that area, and the transportation plan in general, that could take a lot of this transportation off of Bell over towards Grand. Now, open space. The name of the project is Desert Trails, and as you can see in this graphic, trails are prevalent throughout the project. This was designed excuse me, to be accessible. Every portion of the project will be accessible to other portions through trails. So you can bicycle, you can walk, and to get anywhere in the development. And as I said before, this is part of the signature trail. So this potentially, when the signature trail is complete, you could ride your bike into town all the way to Surprise and further. And I brought this diagram, you may remember, from the Parks and Trails Master Plan, and for two reasons. One, I wanted to show you where the site is on here and in its relation to the signature trail and how that goes through there. And like I said, you'll be able to connect it to the city via trails, equestrian, if you want to see horses walk down Bell Road. But also, this trail right in through here is a county trail that is currently being built. So eventually you'll be able to, if anybody has energy, to bicycle all the way to Scottsdale. So the connectivity is going to be there. The second reason for this map is also shows the community parks and how these community parks should be spread out. And you'll see that in the master plan, this project is located right in the area where one of these community parks should be located. This graphic showing you that this 35-acre community park is located right on Deer Valley Road. Now, this is a community park. It's going to be for the public, and that's why it's very important to be on Deer Valley Road on here. This is a conceptual plan of the community park. There will be a trailhead. You can drive from any other part here, park, and then be able to go onto the trail. There's going to be equestrian facilities, such as parking for trailers and watering, multi-use fields, and the applicant has worked with Mark Coronado, CRS, to provide these fields because Mark wants to be able to program these fields. So if somebody in this neighborhood or anywhere around there wants to play soccer, they don't have to drive all the way into the city. They'll be able to do that right here at this facility. And the one item on here that's very exciting, I think, is disc golf, Frisbee golf, if you will, 18-hole Frisbee golf course that'll be available for residents' use, all residents. The neighborhood parks are located throughout the park, and as I said, they're all connected by trails. And they took a very unique approach for this. Too many times you'll see these little pocket parks that have just a little tot lot for the kids, but those kids do grow up. So there are different themes to each of these parks. An aviary garden, which has places to watch birds and to attract hummingbirds, that sort of thing. A swing garden that has swings and hammocks and also a zip line feature in it. A climbing garden, so you can climb over the mountains. And an art garden to incorporate pieces of art into the play structures. And an eco garden, which will actually educate about the environment and water use in the city in Arizona. That concludes my presentation. Barring any questions you may have for me or the applicant.
Okay. I actually have one for the applicant, please. Could you state your name for the record, please?
Sure. Excuse me. Jeff Bliley, 4800 North Scottsdale Road, here representing the applicant on this matter.
Okay. The question I have actually is, if this has gone back for quite a few years. We've seen this project come forth on different occasions. At this time, is this because of the name change, has there been a new owner to this property? Mm-hmm. And are we actually, is this projected to start when, actually? Is this another, are you looking 3 or 4 years out?
Well, yes, we are looking 3 or 4 years out. There has been a change of ownership. Centex was the previous owner who brought forward the PAD amendment that Bart referred to as DeSeo, and that was approved about 2 years ago. The current property owners are H.E. Elman Companies, owns the property now. They're not home builders, so they have purchased a property. We've been in the process now for about the last 18 months going through the rezoning process, and then, ultimately when this market starts to turn around, they would then sell off parcels to home builders. As you know, this piece of property is part of the WSLG, the West Surprise Landowners Group. They're still a member of that party, of that group. The sewer treatment plant for this property, the developer phase has been completed. They have an allocation of sewer capacity, not the entire needs for the entire buildup, but they have an allocation. If you saw in one of the maps Bart showed, you probably saw where Deer Valley is kind of graded there. The sewer line for this property has all been put in. They participated in that. It goes from the sewer treatment plant all the way to 237th Avenue. They've got agreements with the town regarding the fire department, locating the fire station sites. There's been 3 designated sites. And, then once things move around, they'll probably start working on the water campus. The water campus, we spent a lot of time working with the water department, creating the water service area. This particular one is referred to basically as a central service area. It's about 7 square miles, and the water campus for that area will be located in the northwest corner of the project. And that site's been set aside for the water campus for the whole region. So, from a time frame as far as development goes, you're looking at, 3 to 5 years from now at probably a good scenario. I mean, there's still 2 or 3 years worth of infrastructure to build. As Bart mentioned, one of the things we have to build is going to be the roads getting into the site, and 219th Avenue is going to be the main point of access. And as you know, right now, that's a problem road for the city because it's just basically a dirt road with at-grade crossings of those washes, and the people that live out there now, whenever it rains, they're flooded out. So we'll be building that whole road from Sun Valley up to Deer Valley with bridges and making it a full 100-year access, as well as Deer Valley from 211th back to its current terminus. So those both have to be in place before we can really start building, as well as an entire water campus that's going to have to be built. So,
very good.
And given today's economy, with the market the way it is, there's nobody anxious to build any homes today.
Very good. Commissioner Summers, any questions?
Yeah, I had a couple of questions. One of them is in reference to the Volvo Proving Ground and the berm / 17-foot well, 70-foot high berm / block wall treatment along that edge. And I'm just wondering, would that be placed on Volvo's property? I'm assuming that the developer helps pay for that? Or?
Right. I think the city kind of, I don't think there was anything mandated really as far, is there any stipulation? Or I
It
can't.
wasn't mandated, but it did show on the Volvo property.
Right.
Before.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think what it is that we've been dealing with Volvo, and I think at the end of the day, we'll have to have some agreement in place with Volvo as to exactly what's going to be built. But then the intent would be to build a berm that we would pay for on their property.
Yeah, I'm a little concerned about what that might look like. And obviously, that's a question for the future, but that is a concern. If you've got a street, you've got a house on one side, and you've got a berm.
Yeah,
wall, whatever.
I think it's something that Volvo wants. I mean, it's certainly not anything that
Yeah.
we're anticipating, but it's probably something they'd look for with the, I mean, right now, the property is zoned for 2,300 units. Whether this were approved or not, that's something they're going to probably want
Yeah.
as homes start getting built out there. And so we'll have to work with the city to make sure it's aesthetically pleasing and that type of thing.
Absolutely.
I've seen them done where there's landscaping involved
Sure.
on it, like in El Segundo in California, and it can be attractive or it can be very unattractive depending
Right.
on how it's done.
I think it behooves everybody to make sure it's attractive. I mean,
Okay.
we don't want an unattractive berm right next to the project
And-
either.
And my secondary question was how long of an interactive process is not quite the right word in formulating this new plan, because it seems like it's very, very well thought out.
Well, we've been working on it, I think,
For about a year and a half.
a year and a half.
Okay, so a lot of back and forth.
A lot of back and forth. We had a lot of meetings with the staff. I mean, when you look at the land use plan, I mean, if you just take a cursory look, it doesn't look, there's some shifting, but it's basically a very similar plan, but there's a lot of subtle details that are changed. I think we've added a lot of amenities as far as the parks and open space. We're preserving more of the washes. We have gotten away from some of the medium density product that had been anticipated in the previous plan. Whether or not that would have ever been built, I think, was another thing. But that's what it was. We kind of get shifted away from there, a little more traditional. But we did spend a lot of time with staff going over the plan before we even submitted. I think we met on numerous occasions before we even had an application come in.
Okay, well, it shows it in the plan, so in my review anyway. Thank you.
Commissioner Chapman.
I'd like to agree. I think you have a challenging piece of land, and
It's
I,
challenging is a good word. This project goes way back.
well, I was very surprised reading through that how well that you've utilized, and really great concept here. I really think it's a good design. I did have a question about, and this may be premature, but one about the community plaza. Like, I know there's the community plaza and parks in some of the developments that have happened here in Surprise have either not been built or whatever. Is there a schedule or something that would be proposed
I don't know.
in terms of the relationship between the development of housing and
Actually,
development of
if
that
you-
property?
If you do go to the phasing plan, I'm sorry, if you do go to the phasing plan, that shows that area is part of the initial phase.
Phase one?
Is the initial.
That is
So,
correct.
okay. And then also the density issue, that because you remove the golf course, is that what increased the open space or
Well, the
reduced
golf course was taken out in the previous plan.
Okay,
That was
so-
taken out in Centex's plan. What we've done is, I think in Centex's plan, they were going to narrow some of those channels down with some grading and whatnot. Our proposal is to really leave them natural, so they're wider now. And so when we've done that, we've lost units in that effect.
Let's reduce the unit.
The unit count went down by about 200 overall.
Okay.
That and a combination of removing a few of the medium density parcels.
And the citizens' input, is there anything?
We had a neighborhood meeting, 2-3 weeks ago, a month ago. We had about 6 people show up. There's really not that many people living out there. I think the people that showed up, I don't know if anybody actually lived out there. I think they just owned property out there and were more just interested to see what was going on. Want to know the timing and roads and sewer and water, a lot of infrastructure issues. But I don't think we heard anybody that was concerned with anything.
No, all the comments were positive at that meeting.
And I noticed that you have a school proposed here. The relationship between Luke and the school, is this...
It's okay. The schools, as long as they're outside the noise contours, are permitted, and this whole project is outside the noise contours. so it's okay.
All right. That's all I have. Thank you.
Commissioner Howland?
It is on.
There you go.
Magic. Is really the surroundings. It's going to have power lines on one side, the air base on the other, the proving ground that's there now. And I'm not sure, what is the ultimate land use of the proving ground?
I think it's designated proving ground, or is it
It is
employment?
designated proving ground in the general plan.
And
And
that-
this is, I believe they're leasing from the state.
So there's, but in the ultimate plan, we have never changed like to commercial or anything like that.
No, we have not.
Because it does sit next to the landfill, and that's, I guess the concern I have is these are all issues that people in town complain about now, and it seems like we need some stipulation to make sure that when people buy out there, that they're aware when they buy, and I guess that's, I mean, the landfill isn't going to go away, the air base, but people buy a house and then a year from now, they suddenly realize that there's an air base in town.
Right.
It's
Actually, don't we have a provision already in place that all homes that are built anywhere in that vicinity, in the office itself, it has to be designated so that everyone knows that what is around that surrounding area. That has, every home bill has to have that.
okay. Well, that was my question, because
Yeah.
I mean, it's going to look nice when you drive in, and
Right.
I'm not saying that these are a problem, but they are to some people. The other is the school, and as I recall, this development's in the Wickenburg School District,
It is.
and so anybody that goes to high school in this development's going to end up having to go all the way to Wickenburg for the time being.
I think they can opt out and go to a high school if there's room in Dicer Elementary.
But that's if there is room, and that, I mean, that's a real warning, I think, that's unusual for these developments on the south end of the Wickenburg School District, is
But
they're so unreasonably far from high school that,
I think as you see some of these projects start to develop, you've got a few large projects in the Wickenburg School District. Surprise Foothills, for one, is in Surprise, and that's over 1,000 acres. And then Sun City Festival is also in the Wickenburg
right,
School
I know
District.
that, and that's,
I think there's a high school site planned in those sites, potentially.
anyway, these are just issues that I can see, ultimately, they'll come back and say, why didn't you say something?
Madam Chair, if I could just address that just for real quickly. One tool that I've used successfully in other jurisdictions is called a letter of awareness. And it's somewhat similar to what we're doing right now with the loop contours, but you can expand that a little bit. Let me just give you a broad premise because I think it addresses a lot of your concerns. This is a beautiful piece of property, but at the same time, it does have some challenges.
Right.
The letter of awareness is simply put is a listing of unusual things that are happening in and around the development that we think that property owners need to be aware of, letter of awareness.
Yeah.
And it could include the school district and where the kids would go to school. It would include the proving grounds, the Air Force Base, and so on. And the way I've used that before is before we issue a building permit or before we specifically issue the certificate of occupancy, they have to sign a letter of awareness. All it is an acknowledgement form about what could happen in the area. I think it would be inappropriate for us to require that as a condition today because we haven't talked to the applicant about that at all. But at some point down the road, whether it's a site plan, plat, a subdivision, when they get further along, we may want to revisit that because all it really does is to put an owner on notice of those things that could happen that would impact their quality of life in their subdivision.
As I recall, when we bought here, we got a book.
Right.
The bad thing about a book is
You have to
they
dig
hand you
through
the
it.
book and they hand you the papers and you sign the papers and go home and read the book, maybe, which it tells you all the bad things on page 80. But, I mean, it's I don't think any of these things are the end of the world, but to some people they are. That's the issue. The trail and everything that's going to go down the wash, that's going to be clearly platted so that at some future date the homeowners can't change their mind and decide they don't want
That'll be
people
dedicated
wandering
to-
through them.
Yes, that's going to be dedicated to.
That will be dedicated,
50-foot wet width as per the city surprise
Right.
parks and trails.
so that is not just in the plat, but it is
That is correct.
dedicated, okay. The park that's going to be given to the city, is that going to be built by the developer, or is that going to be built,
Yeah, the developer's going to improve the community park.
so it'll be complete, it won't be like
No, it'll be
the
it'll
other
be
one we
complete.
had over here,
They'll-
okay.
they'll- Associated with this PAD amendment is also a development agreement amendment that's going to go to council with the PAD, and that talks about some of these things, but certainly we're going to build the community park, and there's some impact fee credits we can get for that, but
Yeah,
the developer will
okay.
do it.
It's just so that nobody's surprised when the park isn't there, or...
Like Surprise Farms?
Well, I'm not going to name any names, but the one thing that this plan changes that the other plan had is there's no east-west collector street at the mid-mile. And what I found in the rest of the city where we have the mid-mile collector streets, that provides a logical route for biking and for inter-community travel. And in this case, if you live on the west side of this community and if you can't walk, or you don't want to walk, you have to drive all the way around the development. Is there any possibility of including
There will be connections for pedestrian trails and bicyclists to get through, but we purposely took out that road because of the number of washes we have to deal with. And every time you cross a wash, you have to build a bridge. And one of the things where this project differs from even the previous DeSale project, they didn't amend the development. The existing development agreement today goes all the way back to Fox Trails. And in that development agreement at the time, there was no obligation on the developer to build Pinnacle Peak or 211th Road.
Yeah.
And so now we've got that obligation. So we've got additional bridges at 219th. We've got all these bridges on Pinnacle Peak and in Deer Valley now that it's a parkway. So we did eliminate the one collector internal to try to reduce some of the bridges that we had to build.
I'm not sure the people living on the other side aren't going to feel like they're separated. But the other thing then is could we stipulate that the east-west path through there would be open to non-residents? What you see is there neither of the street on either mile on either side of this is the type of street that'll have a bike lane.
You're looking at a half-mile pedestrian, bicycle accessible.
So that people that are cutting east-west will have a way to get through this mile, I guess is what I'm saying.
And I think we do have those passes, just that we will have to put a public easement on it, a recreation easement, if you will.
Yeah, because homeowners associations tend to restrict their paths to homeowners. And what I'm saying is we don't have any mid-connector on this, which is...
We're fine with that. That's fine. An east-west connector at the mid-mile that's open.
For at least the bikes. I mean, I would like to see in the street, but I'm not going to press that. But at least, because the mid-mile streets are the ones that are the best bike routes in town. And
Sure.
We can make sure that the final
Yeah.
site plan, final plat has
Okay.
that.
there's an exhibit 4.8, and I think you answered this, but I just want to verify it. 4.8 shows some typical lots, and it shows a sidewalk in the front. And isn't there a standard now that when we have sidewalks on city streets that we have a space between the back curb and the sidewalk for the street planning? Will that be a standard on here then?
Yes,
Yeah, curb-separated sidewalks.
absolutely. And this goes back to about the transportation plan, how those things changed, because not too long ago, those used to be 4 foot, now they're 5 foot.
So, I mean, this would give you the impression that it's kind of like, say, Sun City Grand, where the sidewalk is right in the street, but this will have the 5 foot.
Right, that's correct.
Okay. I think that answers all my questions. Thank you.
Commissioner Smith?
I had one question. You were showing the road improvements of 219th up to Deer Valley. Is there any plans to change 211th, or is it going to continue to be the 2-lane asphalt?
211th doesn't go south of the property.
Okay, just It ends at Deer Valley?
Basically ends at Deer Valley, because what you
So it
have,
only runs from Pinnacle Peak to Deer Valley? It does not connect down to
I think it-
Sun Valley?
no, there's no plan to connect it because of the large wash there. You'd have to, it's not on the map, but just south of those power lines, it's a huge wash. And so I think what the city did is try to eliminate some of those large bridges they have to build.
Right here. In this area, right through here,
Right.
is a very large wash.
Okay, so the two routes to the property would be 219th and Deer Valley?
That is
Yes.
correct.
Okay.
And I think in the city's transportation plan, 203rd goes through, or, I'm not sure, I think 203rd is shown with a bridge that goes all the way to Deer Valley. They kind of went 2-mile spacings because of the size of the washes. And then ultimately, I think in the plan, then 211th goes up and connects up to Jomax.
Okay.
In some very long-range plan. I mean, that'll be way out there.
I have no further questions.
Commissioner Bennett.
The questions that I had were already addressed, but I share the same sentiment. I think this is a very well thought out plan, in particular the trail system, open land use, and the community park theme. I really love that idea. I think I'd love to see more novel ideas like this in future projects. So I think you guys did a great job on it.
Thank you.
This does require a public hearing. Anyone wishing to speak on this? Seeing none, I close the public and ask for a motion, please.
I move to recommend approval to the mayor and city council, case PADA 09-036, a major PAD amendment for desert trails, and to adopt staff's findings and conditions A through J.
Second.
At this time, commissioners, please vote.
Did I vote? I didn't?
Did yours go off too?
I want to push mine again.
Madam Chair, the motion has passed with a vote of 5 ayes, 1 no, and 1 absent.
Actually, I didn't, my screen went dead. It was 4, definitely 4. And my whole system just went down.
Okay, should we redo a roll call vote?
I think it's just
Are we okay?
adequate to show that it's 6 yeses and one absent. Thank you.
Okay, so that has passed. At this time, is there any other business that needs to be discussed? Jeff, can you tell us our next meeting date, please?
No, I can't, but I bet you Deb can. While Deb's looking it up, let me just say one thing, and that is that I know we've had some, try to say this the proper way, we've had some challenges over the past years about some parks getting unfinished. We're very, very attentive to that now. The new development code suggests that parks have to be done and in the ground before homes are built. And in those situations where we can go back, where there's existing agreements, and revise them to get the parks done with a date certain, we're doing that, because I think we've had challenges with that in the past, and I can commit to you we're not going to do that again, because we think it is problematic when residents are promised a park and it doesn't happen. So we've learned from that, and we've changed our processes, so I just want the commission to be aware of that. Deb?
The next meeting is April 6th.
April 6th. At this time, this meeting is adjourned.